Hello again, my name is Mateusz Kolosowski. I'm an international master from Poland. Some of you may know me from, for instance, a course I've developed with, in cooperation with the Remote Chess Academy, which pertained to Sicilian structures. And this is a video aimed at presenting another interesting Sicilian game. Hopefully you will find it interesting. This was definitely a memorable game for me because you're about to witness a game I played against the legendary Croatian player Grandmaster Bojan Kuraica in La Palma Open 2019, a tournament which I managed to win, and this is a game which was very important from the perspective of the entire tournament because Grandmaster Kuraica was the leader of the tournament before the game, and thanks to winning it I managed to become the leader myself and eventually win the entire competition. So let's not waste any time. The game is interesting enough for us to jump right into it. There was e4 c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4. I remember that when preparing for this game, I wanted to make sure that I know my opponent's opening repertoire quite well, and if I'm not mistaken, at this point he played knight f6 in the past years. He also played e6. There were some e5 games, although again, I might be wrong here, but definitely he had a couple of options at his disposal. After e6 he also had the Taimanov, he had the Four Knights Sicilian, which is actually what we are about to witness. He went knight f6, knight c3 and e6. And as mentioned, I opted for the Four Knights Sicilian, which is which results after these moves: knight c6, b takes c6 and e5. I'm not sure if you need e5 for 4 knights. Maybe you actually just call this position Four Knights Sicilian, but this is just about terminology. In either case, white needs to choose a move, and there are two main options. Knight takes c6 is one of those. The other is a very interesting approach. Another move could be knight to b5, and the intention is to prove black wrong and occupy the d6 square. As you see, this is currently quite weak, these two squares. You could easily imagine white trying to play bishop f4 in one of the upcoming moves, and at this point black has pretty much two moves at his disposal. He could either go bishop b4 or he could go d6, and let's just put d6 on the board for the moment. And it is important for a black player, whoever wants to play this Four Knights Sicilian needs to understand that if this happens, if white goes knight b5, and unless black goes bishop b4, then pretty much the only other move is a6, is d6. But after bishop f4, e5, bishop g5, we transpose to the Sveshnikov Sicilian or Pilnik Sicilian, as some of you may know it. And this is a completely different line, different system, and definitely requiring quite a lot of understanding, memorization. One of the topical lines currently at practically any level, and well, it does require a lot of work to be done from black's perspective. In the game I chose knight takes c6. He played pawn takes b takes c6. D takes c6 doesn't really make sense because white just exchanges the queens and the black king is deprived of the right to castle, so this is never an option. E5, knight d5, knight e4. This is the essential position of this line. Currently black has a couple of moves. There is f5, there is queen c7, and in fact let me just show you one interesting line that is, I played this long time before this game against Kuraica, and this was my first experience in this line, and it went queen c7. I played with white. f4 is the only move to pretty much safeguard the pawn on e5. So f4 was played. Here black goes queen b6. One of the intention is to bring the knight to e3 and also to play bishop b4. So generally black is not playing in the most straightforward opening fashion. He's not fighting for the center with the pawns. Instead, he decides to play with the pieces and create some immediate threats. That's why it's quite a tricky opening for white. And at this point, I knew that the main move is c4, which I went for. Bishop b4 check. And this came to me as a bit of a surprise because my opponent didn't play that before. And over the board, I realized that the only move at this point is king e2. If white goes instead bishop d2, then the queen e3 comes with great force because the bishop on d2 is pinned. So king e2 is played, and after bishop a6, I also realized that the only reasonable move is king f3. I had to find these moves over the board. Later on I realized, I learned that this is all theory and great many games have been played, but if you need to find such moves over the board, it's very uncomfortable because you never feel if you're playing correctly or if you're about to get checkmated in 20 moves or so, because obviously it's not where you want to have your king in the opening, but in fact this king is quite safe there because the position is closed, and this is an important lesson for this opening for 4 Knights Sicilian. Let's get back to our game continuation. So as mentioned, Grandmaster Kureita went queen c7, I played f4, and here he played queen a5, which is quite a tricky move, and I didn't really spend so much time on preparation, but I knew that bishop d2 is the right move, and after queen b6, bishop d3, he played a5. There are many other moves in this position, and definitely this came as a surprise to me, as I didn't see that move before, and I had to sort of find a way to maybe not refute this system, but at least try to understand the subtle differences between other moves like bishop a6, knight b4, there's also f5, and a3 was quite a surprising idea. I played queen e2 because I wanted to make sure that e3 is under my control. Also, this gives white some flexibility as regards castling in the future. And also, this is a legitimate pawn sacrifice, but what I wanted to show is that after queen takes b2, I can easily just castle, and my lead in development outweighs the pawn advantage that my opponent has, because if you look at this position closely, black is still very much behind in development. The queen and the knight are only pieces that are centralized. So black will really need to spend quite a lot of time in order to finish his development, and I can of course use this time already to prepare my attack. He went to bishop e7, which I replied to with a3. I'm not sure if this is the strongest move, possibly c4, the direct c4 move is also okay, but a3 was aimed at controlling b4 square so that after c4 the knight can never jump there, and I think there was some point behind this move. He played f5, which is the correct approach, and also quite a typical idea in all of these systems. E takes f6, knight takes f6, bishop c3. And at this point Kureita made a mistake, because he wanted to play, I think, a bit too ambitiously. It was necessary for him to go just kingside castle to safeguard his king's position. Instead, he opted for bishop a6 and missed that with a very quietly and innocently looking move like queenside castle. Black's position is already very difficult. The pawn on d7, which is a backward pawn, is going to be under attack after a series of exchanges. We can easily imagine a sequence like this. As you see, many exchanges on the board, and well, not rook d6, I think rook takes d7 is much stronger. White is a healthy pawn up. Also, look at black's pawn formation. Definitely only white can win here. So, because of the fact that he wanted to exchange this bishop on c8 against my bishop on d3, which is strategically a good idea he just had a bad timing for this. He found himself in a very difficult, if already not lost, position. I know we're just discussing the middle game here, but in a moment you'll find how tricky black's position is. So here Grandmaster Kureitsa went for bishop takes d3, which I replied to with knight takes f6. I think queen takes d3 is also a perfectly sound move. And after queen takes d3, the entire point is that after bishop takes c3, I don't really have to take back. I can, but I don't have to. In some lines, I might just take on d7 with a check, getting a direct access to the black king. And this is definitely dangerous for black. And therefore he just protected his pawn on d7. But that enables white to create a very powerful initiative. Bishop takes f6 first, g takes f6, and queen c3. The problem for black is that he can of course castle, but it's not really clear if the king is going to be safer on g8 or even h8, considering the lack of the pawn on g7, the fact that there is an entire g file open. Also, this pawn on d7 remains weak practically till the end of the game, so I imagined a situation like just kingside castle, for example. But if that happens, then I can just easily play rook d6, then double up along the d file and just attack the pawn on d7 very effectively, with black still having some problems and a very passive position at the end of the day. So after queen c3, he played king e7, which is on one hand a very understandable move, and on the other a very risky option. I played g4 because I recognize that if I allow my opponent to consolidate, for instance by playing rook g8, then maybe putting the rook to g6, potentially even playing f5, he might get some sort of play. And against a grandmaster so strong and so experienced, you don't really want to give him any chance. So I played g4 with the clear intention of just playing g5 and finishing the game as quickly as possible. Rook f8, I went f5, of course. Again, the intention is to give checkmate, f takes e6, and opening the e file as quickly as possible. He went rook g8, queen h3, transferring the queen to the h file, and already we were a bit short of time. I'm not really sure why, but apparently I spent a lot of time on finding the subtle differences between particular recaptures and figuring out the best way to attack. And after queen h3, I remember that I found the only move at this position, in this position for black, which is h5, which looks strange, but I knew that unless he's going to find it, I'm winning this straight away. If after h5, white still maintains the advantage, but this is really the only move that prolongs the game. And I was very lucky to see rook g7, because this enabled me to play g5, a powerful move which breaks black's position, tears this into pieces. G takes f6 is one idea, f takes e6 the other, and the black king is never going to be safe in the middle of the board. He went rook f8, but after rook h to e1, the last piece is brought to the action, and it's quite clear that the black king is going to be accessible to the white's pieces in just a moment. Black went f takes g5, and here came the finishing idea pretty much. I know that f takes e6 was maybe also strong, but f takes e6 actually enables black to play d5, and the pawn on e6 becomes a bit of an artificial shield for the black king, so I didn't want that to happen. Instead, queen h6, renewing the threat of taking on e6, but this time with the rook, because if you imagine rook takes e6, pawn takes back to e6, queen takes e6, it's checkmate. I'm sure that you can picture that these are just two moves. The thing is that at the end of the day, the d file gets open and the black king has no space, no place to escape. So here my opponent went no, he actually just resigned after queen h6. The problem for him is that if he went rook f to f7, which we can just put on the board, then one of the easiest way to win, I'm not sure if actually the best, but f6 is one of those moves. It's a fork, and after rook takes f6 I can just collect the rook for free. Also, I'm sure that a move like f takes e6 would do, because then I get to attack this rook, and also rook takes d7 is an idea. If he takes back on e6, I play queen takes e6 with checkmate to follow. Rook g to f7 also does not bring black any relief. There's a couple of ideas. The most fancy is probably queen takes e6, and after d takes e6, this is quite a unique way of giving the checkmate, but unfortunately for white, there is also king d8 at this point. On the other hand, I don't have to play this. I can just play f takes e6, which is probably the easiest and the most effective solution. So from this game, you should probably remember that the Four Knights Sicilian is an interesting way to play for black, although currently it's not so popular, and probably this means that the black players realize that there are some practical problems yet to be solved, or maybe it's impossible to solve them. Still, you can surprise your opponent from time to time with this line, and this is something your opponents are likely not going to be prepared so well. This usually entails playing with the pieces in the center instead of the pawns, very non-standard positions, interesting ones, but also you do take the risk of ending up in your king in the center, and a picture like that at the very end is something you need to be ready for. I hope you enjoyed this nice attacking Sicilian game, and thanks for watching.
If you enjoyed this video, there is one more thing that you will enjoy as well. Recently, I've been analyzing the results of different students of the Remote Chess Academy, and I've been checking who are the guys who got the greatest amount of progress. And it came down to the group of people who studied some of our most fundamental courses, such as the Grandmaster's Positional Understanding. And not only those guys studied these courses, but they also really mastered the skill. And that's the level that helps you to gain 3, sometimes even 5 additional 100 rating points just after mastering a certain one course. And that's why I've decided to open a new enrollment for this course. This way, you're not just going to be studying watching the video lessons, but you will also get my personal support. I'll be helping you in case you have any questions, you can ask them. You will also have the connection to the other students who are within the same group. And finally, you'll be also receiving certain tasks that will help you to practice and to master the skills necessary. That's why we're going to open up this enrollment, get a certain group of students that we can handle and provide my personal attention to, and then we're going to close the enrollment and stop accepting new students. So if you don't want to miss out, if you want to be in that group of people who are going to significantly improve their chess results after studying and mastering this program, check out the link down below and I'll see you there.